Zoom link, click the 3 little dots in the blue square on the top right of your thumbnail and put your name, first name, last initial, and your pronouns and your organization, so we know who's who and where you're from, because I see that It's Me is here, but I'm not sure who that is. Um, and I see Alan Harned is still connecting to audio. Max is here. All right. So again, for those of you who just joined, please update your name in your Zoom link so that we can see who's who with your first name, last initial, your pronouns, your organization name. And if you're on the phone and you want to put it in the chat, who you are, we can put your name next to your phone number. So I see someone from a city office. I see a city number is on here, but I'm not quite sure who it is. So Wendy Fuster is manning the chat and trying to help me with these technical pieces. So feel free to wave if you need to get my attention, or put something in the chat if you want to get her attention. And other than that, we'll go ahead and get started. So hope you're all doing well. Thursday afternoon, this is the Transportation Working Group. I hope you're all seeing the presentation screen. Yes, great, excellent. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. So we put out the survey at the end of each of our meetings, and I really appreciate your feedback. We do read it. We try to incorporate your ideas into the next meeting. So some of the things we heard, what groups are we working with outside of RVAgreen 2050? We heard some best practices would be brain teasers. We heard longer breakout sessions would be really helpful. And we heard that more time with other working groups would be helpful to see how all of this is planning out. Those are all excellent points, and I just wanted to share those with all of you so that you could see that we're probably mostly all on the same page with these questions and ideas. In terms of what groups we're working with outside of RVAgreen 2050, the list is long. These working groups are made up. We have somewhere around 120 organizations represented among all these working groups, individuals and organizations. But we've really tried to cover the gamut of all different topical areas. So that's just the working groups. From here, then, it'll go out into the community engagement, where we'll be asking you for more ideas on how to engage the greater public. So this is really an evolving process. That's why we're taking our time with it to make sure that we are inclusive of everyone who needs to be part of this planning process. So let's see, in terms of the agenda today, we are settling in, going over the ground rules next. Won't spend much time with that because I think we have a great group who's done this before, and everyone's being kind and working with us to make sure we're as efficient and effective as possible. We'll go over the RVAgreen 2050 equity screening tool and then wrap up in next steps. So today's objective is to further understand how equity, and particularly racial equity, is central to the RVAgreen 2050 process. And then we're going to provide input on the equity screening tool as one of the mechanisms we'll use to center equity in our work. We're all learning about an evolving systems approach to climate action planning as critical to long-term reinforcement of safety, justice, health, and prosperity for all. So today, the group expectations, like I said, you've seen this list. Thank you so much for respecting each other and this space and participating. And then the defining acronyms. I think as these meetings move into, we'll talk more about what's to come, but we'll be getting more technical, and we'll be asking for more of your personal expertise. And so please continue to share. I've had a lot of feedback that folks are really appreciative of the technical backgrounds of that is represented in these groups. And so we have some ideas on how to further share that information between meetings that I'll get to in a minute. But first, let's go ahead and do an icebreaker. Wendy is going to put you into breakout rooms of 2, and you have a couple of options. If you just need a few minutes to introduce yourself to someone new, kind of collect yourself, vent out loud, talk about how you're feeling today, please use that time as needed. If you have some ideas that you want to share in terms of reflecting on how equity has come up in your own work or life, this will be a great time to share that with someone new. So when Wendy's ready, she'll go ahead and send you into those breakout rooms.
Okay, and I might need to move a couple people here, but they should be off.
We've met through our efforts to do a bike ped plan for the region. So good to see you again. And Stefan, good to meet you. I'm with Plan RVA, or the Richmond Region Transportation Planning Organization, and we're working on a bike ped plan. We're also working, have worked on transit regionally as well. So it's good to be here. My first meeting with RVAgreen.
Welcome.
Barbara, you were speaking at the CVTA, weren't you?
I wasn't speaking, but I was on the YouTube listening.
Okay, same.
Yeah. Did you were able to get in?
I was able to watch on YouTube. I
Okay.
found out
Good.
that even though VCN is has a seat on the planning, like on specifically Plan RVA, we don't have a seat on the transportation planning organization for some reason. So I'm not allowed to speak there.
Oh, I don't know if that would be the case. I think everyone's always welcome to speak. At least you should.
Apparently not. I asked them
You
about it.
should be able to.
No,
Well,
we can't give you a Zoom link.
You know, this is reminding me that we at the very first meeting, I think we did kind of around the room introductions, but if we could just quickly just say your name and your organization, I think that would be great. There will be lots more opportunities for breakout rooms and having the one-on-one conversations and then big group conversations. But why don't we go around and we'll just say our name and our organization. So Dawn Alexi, City of Richmond, Office of Sustainability, and I'll pass it to Wendy, and then she can pass it to someone, and then they can pass it to someone, because I know we're all seeing each other in different orders.
Sure. Wendy Fuster, I'm with the Office of Sustainability, Climate Action Coordinator, and I will pass it to Wyatt.
Hey, my name is Wyatt Gordon. I'm with Virginia Conservation Network.
And then you have to call on someone else.
I will call on Barbara then.
Okay, I'm Barbara Jaycox, and I'm with Plan RVA. And now I have to look, let's see, I'll call on John E.
Muted.
And you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, I'm John with the Department of Public Works, Richmond, Virginia, City of Richmond, rather, and Patricia Robinson.
I think she had to go to the meeting briefly. Oh, you're back. I'm sorry.
I was. No, thank you, Barb. My name is Tricia Robinson. I'm with GRTC Planning Department.
Thank you for being here. So let's, call on someone else. Or maybe you can't all see the list.
It's hard to see.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and call out the names. We'll just, we'll make it easy on you. Okay, Angela.
I'm Angela Fontaine. Excuse me. I am a roundtable member. My professional life, I'm a career transition consultant with a global outplacement agency.
Awesome. Thank you. How about Dan?
I'm Dan Mata. I'm with Plan RVA as a a graduate fellow. I'm also a Master of Urban and Regional Planning student at VCU.
Thank you. Jason?
Hi, I'm Jason James. I am a professor of cultural anthropology, and I do Bikeable Richmond as a Facebook page.
Fantastic. Max?
Hey, I'm Max Buchanan. I work for Venture Richmond as the Director of Riverfront and Downtown Placemaking.
Thank you. And David?
Hey everyone, I'm David. I'm a master's student at VCU and currently interning with the Office of Sustainability.
Thank you. Carrie?
I am Carrie Rose Pace, Director of Communications with GRTC Transit System.
And Alex?
Hi, I'm Alex Dandridge. I'm with the City of Richmond's Urban Design Committee and Commission of Architectural Review.
Fantastic. Diane?
I'm Diane Linderman. I am with VHB, which is a consulting firm in town, and worked with Alicia and her team on the RVAgreen, the original.
Awesome. Thanks. Alan?
Alan Harned. I'm the Director of Virginia Clean Cities, which is a statewide government and industry coalition to reduce emissions in the transportation sector with technologies that also improve our economy.
Thank you. Chris?
Hello, Chris Bast. I work on climate change for Governor Northam.
Perfect. Sandra?
Hi, I'm Sandra, and I'm called upon often. I am a leader as a volunteer throughout the city of Richmond for many, many years. I do work in government, and I'm excited to be a part of the group.
Thank you for being here. Alicia?
Everyone, I'm Alicia Zatkoff. I'm the sustainability manager for the city, and just here supporting my awesome team on all of the different working groups. So glad to be with you all today.
Thank you. How about Anthony?
Hello, my name is Kirk Anthony Varga. I am here from the Roundtable of Environmental Justice and a VCU student mastering in environmental studies with a minor in urban studies and planning, and work with a VCU outdoor venture program that does transportation around the river side and the city around students and work with the groundwork.
Excellent. Thanks, Anthony. Let's see, Jeff.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jeff Crawford. I represent the city's finance and administration portfolio.
And he's also a co-chair of this group along with Max. So thank you to you both. I think I see a couple more. Trip.
Hi, Trip Pollard, the Land and Community Program Leader for the Southern Environmental Law Center.
Thank you. And Julie?
Julie Manzari. I work for Dominion Energy and the innovation team.
Excellent. Did I miss anybody?
Oh, me.
Oh, please.
Okay, so my name is Stefan Dimitriadis, and I'm actually a little bit of an outlier, I guess, for most people. I'm a professional musician, play with No BS Brass, and I got motivated to get involved after touring around different countries, different parts of the world, and seeing how much better their systems are operating and what they're doing abroad. And I want to be part of the change here. We really need it bad.
Thanks so much. Thanks. I really appreciate everyone representing and speaking up. We're happy to have you here. So I'm going to jump into the presentation. This slide you've seen before. I'm hoping you're seeing the equity slide. Yes? All right. So equity is central to what we're trying to do here, to this planning process. We want to make sure that when planning out any future development and or assisting residents with climate resilience and reducing our carbon footprint, that we are making sure we're doing what we can to prepare them to be more resilient and not increasing Richmond's carbon footprint in the meantime. So in terms of our timeline, we're moving into the orange circles, which is very exciting, and we're getting into the plan development stage. So we've been taking your feedback, like I mentioned earlier. We've turned these into 2-hour meetings with a short break in the middle, and we are talking about some ways to provide a little bit more of a platform for collaboration. So one thought is to have some standing office hours, putting out an open Zoom link, maybe Friday mornings, where you can, I'll have the link open. You could come in and talk to me at that time, or you can schedule a small group meeting, or we'll have some, if you have a topic that you would like to present to the group on, we could have optional presentations in between these meetings that with information that you would like to share from your perspective. So lots of ways to share more information. And does anyone here have any ideas or best practices where you would like to make recommendations in terms of sharing upcoming events, educational opportunities, other ideas for technical
Dawn,
sharing?
if I may.
Yes.
The folks who helped out Hampton with their green bonds recently, which I think is something as a city we want to work towards, they share financial advisors with us. I'd be happy to reach out to him and just ask for a 15-minute presentation for those who are interested.
That would be a great idea. I would love to set up for anyone on here, if you have an idea like that and you want to set up a meeting, I'd be more than happy to do that. So thank you, Jeff. We'll look forward to that. Any other ideas or suggestions or requests? All right. So last time we worked on the vision statement and really appreciated your feedback on that. What we heard were it needs to be simplified. We heard that might want to define what does net zero mean, what are carbon emissions, maybe include some other pollutants or the other pollutants, define what green infrastructure is, overly focused on humans, felt like ecosystems and animals as stakeholders was not included. So these are just some of the thoughts that other folks were giving us as feedback. Has anyone thought any further about the vision that you'd like to share with the group today, or any questions about it? It's still being refined, so there will be more to come, but want to give you an opportunity for any additional feedback now. Okay. Well, the next stage of what we're doing is the equity tool. And so this is a way for us to ensure that making decisions related to policy and planning and programming and budgeting will advance racial equity and shared prosperity. So this equity tool is what we're doing to make sure that that the future is guided by community priorities centered around equity. As we know, we've seen this a few times now, but I really want to make sure everyone understands what these factors are and reminders of why equity is so important and how it's being integrated. So we know that the sensitivity to climate change and the impacts of it affect some members of our community more than others due to a number of root causes and social factors and biological factors. All of these things increase sensitivity to things like extreme weather or heat waves. And while we're all coming from different experiences, we need to see this and hear this and listen and recognize that that others are being affected differently already. So this is a map of Richmond. You've all seen it. On the left is the RVAgreen 2050 Climate Equity Index with the vulnerability scores. So the darker shades of red, that's where the impacts of climate change are felt the most, and the social impacts of climate change we felt the most, and the populations that are most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. And then on the right, you are the Black and Brown communities, and you can see that, or where they are predominantly in the city, and you can see that the shading really overlays. So they are more vulnerable to climate change. Richmond's history, whether measured in centuries, decades, years, months, weeks, or days, is fraught with racism. This is nothing new to us, but it's really important and we need to center it in our conversation. This has created systems that serve our community in inequitable ways, from education and healthcare to government and natural resources. People of color and people who have lower incomes are more likely to live in areas with less green space, have higher rates of health conditions such as asthma, and live in housing without air conditioning. Our Black and brown communities in particular face more harm due to crises such as climate change, and we've seen it most recently with COVID. So for these reasons, it's critical that our efforts to address climate change are carried out in a way that is inclusive of and protects our most vulnerable communities. So what we are doing with this process is centering equity. And I keep repeating that because we really need to kind of process what that means. But by centering equity throughout this planning process and the implementation for RVAgreen 2050, we can address these disproportionate impacts so that all members of the community are adequately prepared for the climate change impacts and are empowered to do their part to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So this slide outlines a framework that we're using to guide our process through 3 components. By making a commitment to correct the past harms and prevent future unintended consequences. So procedural means the plan itself. It's the process to create the plan by including all of the voices into the planning process that have not traditionally been included. So our team in particular has invested a lot of time into our own equity learning journeys to prepare us for making the RVAgreen 2050 process as equitable as possible. We're centering the lived experience of Richmonders, especially those on the front line of climate change, through initiatives like the Racial Equity and Environmental Justice Roundtable. And we have a couple of representatives from that group, from the roundtable, in the working groups. Each working group has at least 2 or 3. So we're really trying to make sure that all voices are heard. And we'll also be making sure that our community engagement activities are accessible later in the spring and fall, and would love any ideas from all of you on how to do that. So distributional means with this component of equity, we'll be looking at the content that we draft together for the strategies and actions, and be thinking about who could potentially benefit from the strategies we come up with and who might be burdened. The equity screening tool that we'll be talking about today will be a document to help guide our thinking here. And then the structural piece is the larger picture. We really want to be closing the gaps so that race and economic status can no longer be used to predict life outcomes, and outcomes for all groups are improved. This is the hardest piece to tackle, and we know we won't solve the problems through this plan that nearly 300 years of racist and inequitable programs and policies have created, but we do hope to chip away at that and leave a positive legacy and lessons learned for future public planning processes. So what is an equity tool? Well, it's both a product and a process. And so the equity screening tool will be used to help us center equity in the actions and strategies. And it's a product as in a document or a checklist, and I'll show you some examples of what other localities have created. But it's also a process. And I think as we go through the activity together, that'll make more sense to you, because it's a way for us to really ingrain equity into our thought processes as we develop our strategies. As we're thinking through this work, there are questions that we might not normally ask ourselves, but this checklist will it creates that vehicle to open us up to new ways of thinking about things that are more equitable. So some examples, this is Cleveland. It has 5 main areas, and for each one, they had a series of questions for stakeholders to go through when developing the policies and strategies as outcomes of their climate action plan. San Antonio had a robust checklist system, and the citizens group responsible for overseeing the climate action plan would go through each strat with this checklist system. Portland has a simpler list of 9 actions that the equity committee look at when going through their existing climate action plan to make it more equitable. And this is an example of Portland's plan. They applied their equity tool to their existing climate action, which is different from what we're doing here because we're incorporating the tool into our plan. It's not kind of an afterthought. But they created new objectives when using the tool and added, and it allowed them to create new specificity to their plan through the lens of their equity tool. So with that, we're going to go into another breakout session. And this is an opportunity for you, again, to just meet someone new and share your thoughts. But we also want to give you the chance to share your understanding of equity as it relates to climate and environment, just to start thinking about that so that when we do get into drafting our work, we're really centering it. So Wendy's gonna put you into breakouts, and if you're with the same person or you want to come back to the main group, we'll be hanging out here. Looks like everyone's coming back.
Yep. Diane, my apologies. I keep getting what's supposed to be my face in one place and my.
It's my fault, Jeff. I was thinking I had 2 Jeffs and I didn't realize I needed to keep you together. So.
Wendy, your hands must move so fast to get everybody in there that quick. You don't have to apologize for anything. You're doing great.
Okay.
I went back to the main room and talked to Dawn and Wendy and Alicia.
Yeah.
Well, they know the most, so that's.
So hopefully that was helpful and useful, and wanted to kind of reflect on that conversation in the larger room, and also ask for any feedback on the video that we shared in the chat, and there was a link in the email from Capital Consulting. I found it really interesting. I've watched it a few times because I feel like I need to keep gleaning that information. It really is layering, but would love to hear from you guys. So please, I'm just going to open the floor and please speak up and share your thoughts.
I'll go ahead and start by saying a couple of things. I spoke briefly with Chris Bass, and immediately we connected on our passion for city living and mobility and stuff like that. And basically the short conclusion we came to is that, you know, the as far as with the transportation side of things, that our car culture is a lot responsible for what's going on, you know, assuming that everyone needs a car, wants a car, has to have one, and our systems are built around it. And that often isn't fair for non-car owners. People just simply don't want to have a car. You know, it's kind of being forced on us. Our cities have been designed with sprawl as a main component, you know, more space, more freedom, as it were. But, you know, often it's not freedom. It's aggravations and police and, you know, renewals, registrations, fees, that sort of thing. You know, but for some reason, it's the way. This is the way.
We love The Mandalorian.
Someone got it. Yes.
I was about to say.
No, I'm with you.
All right. Oh, and a little more backstory about that. Also, a story came up where I traveled overseas with my mother, and she's mildly disabled, bad hips, bad knees, and it really appeared, you know, it was abundantly obvious how much better the systems are abroad for you know, boarding, benches, escalators, elevators, things like that. You know, just mobility, accessibility, you know, and how that is more equitable for people in Europe, you know, by a different kind of design. You know, their older cities had been designed before the cars. They weren't as car dependent and haven't been. But I think, you know, it's culturally embedded somehow, and that's a big hurdle.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts? Okay, I know there's a lot of self-reflection going on. So the next part of what we're going to be doing is is understanding the community priorities. And I think I need to probably share my screen with you again. Let me get back to that. Bear with me here. Okay, are you seeing the understanding community priorities slide? Great.
We're seeing it in your view, Dawn. We're seeing it in the notes view.
Ah, okay. How about now? That works? All right. So there's a document that was shared yesterday with, actually, do you have the link to the understanding community priorities from the maybe I can.
Don't have it up now. I can go look for it while you're talking if you want.
Oh, that's okay. I'm going to go through each one of them. All right. So front and center, this group of 7 priorities was put together from listening sessions that our office did in the frontline communities, the vulnerable communities to climate change. And front and center, racial equity and environmental justice is a community priority. And they asked for more equitable engagement and communication, front and center, tailored to their specific needs and wants. And then government accountability, process oriented. And then the topical priorities are the 4 on the bottom. So community wealth means things like living wages and jobs, economic development, education, training. And then housing and buildings is mostly affordable housing resources and home ownership related to community wealth. And then neighborhoods, that includes priorities like beautification and safety, green spaces, accessibility, walkability, that we were just talking about. And then health and well-being is, of course, a community priority. That's safety and our health. So these are the 7 priorities that we're going to be focusing on with the equity pool. And by centering the community priorities from the listening sessions into this tool, it's a reminder that this is where we need to center the conversation to make sure that we are meeting the needs of those vulnerable populations. So there are 2 versions of the tool. There's a full list, and that's a list of questions and considerations to go through as you're thinking about equitable climate action planning for the city. Then there's a quick guide, which is more realistic version that we'll use as a group. It's shorter and more condensed and hits the higher priority areas, so we don't have to go through 100 questions for every strategy. But I do have that document up. Let's see if I can show it to you so you can be reminded if you hadn't.
And I put a link in the chat also. So.
Okay, great. So can you see this document that I just dragged over here?
No.
No? Okay. Well, Zoom is tricky sometimes. So anyway, there is a document. It was attached yesterday in the email, and you can revisit it to see what that looks like as a Word document. But what we're going to be working on are those same lists in a Google Doc, so that she just put in the chat. So the 7 key questions that we want to go through for our screening tool are actually, do we have a roundtable member who would like to read these?
Anthony?
Sure.
They might not have it. Sometimes people are on phones and it's hard to read. So
I can.
go ahead.
Angela's here. I think.
Oh, Angela. Great. Thank you.
So key questions are, does the proposed action promote racial equity and environmental justice, reflect equitable engagement and communication, demonstrate and promote government accountability, promote community wealth, expand affordable housing, support safe and beautiful neighborhoods, and lastly, promote health and well-being.
So when you guys talked about this, do you have any kind of background that you want to share with us about that conversation?
So the conversation was pretty, need hours and hours of collaboration. And, you know, I believe in this last meeting, we kind of broke apart or looked at the mission statement, and that's kind of the process we had to coming up with this. It is still, this should be reflected in our mission statement as well. Of course, it's probably brings up a lot of questions and the how, and from what I understand, that's what we're here for. So.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So with that, I'm going to introduce the equity tool, and then we're going to go to a little 5-minute break so that you can take care of any business you need to take care of and pull up the Google document so we're all on the same page. This is what it looks like. So when we get into this next, I'll explain what we're doing. But we'll go ahead and take a 5-minute break. So let's come back at 1:55. And in the meantime, so that we can start right on time, like I said, Wendy is putting the Google document link in the chat so you can pull that up separately. For those of you who don't have access to a computer right now, I will share my screen so that you can see it on mine, and then we can always enter your comments at another time. But for now, go ahead and take your break, and we'll see you back in 5 minutes. All right, thanks. And to come back, go ahead and open the Google Doc that's in the chat, the link to the equity tool, and that should open up in a separate browser. And like I said, if for any reason you can't access that, let us know and we'll be sure to capture your feedback. Welcome back, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, everyone's on mute, so I don't know if you can hear me or not, but I saw some nods. So welcome back. We're going to jump right into our activity for today, where we would love your feedback, your thoughts on this tool. And we're going to walk through this first example together. We're going to go through the environmental justice and racial equity community priority as a group. And the way this works is on the right, you see where there are stars and questions and X's. And this is a live working document. All of you can access it at the same time. And so you'll see lots of things moving around, but it's really just picture it like a whiteboard or a butcher paper, and we're all having Sharpies and stickers and Post-it notes in the old days. We're trying to do this virtually and make sure that everyone's feedback is getting incorporated into this. So what we're going to do is think about an example of how we might use this tool to put an equity lens on a strategy that we might be incorporating. And so the one on this slide talks about something from Richmond 300, a strategy where 16.4, continue funding programs to plant trees and educate the public on the importance of trees. So that sounds great, but let's think about that in terms of equity and environmental justice and racism. And we need to ask some questions like, what communities would benefit most from the proposed action? Okay, traditionally, where are trees planted? If we were to provide resources to the city, let's think about how we could potentially lift up some communities that aren't traditionally recognized or receive these shared assets. Does the proposed action generate burdens, either directly or indirectly, to historically disenfranchised communities? You can read these on your own, but can the benefits of the proposed action be targeted in progressive, creative, proactive ways to reduce historical or current disparities? And how can that reduction be measured? Does this acknowledge, respect, honor the culture, historic assets, and traditions of historically disenfranchised communities? Does this prioritize an identified geography that's vulnerable to the impacts of climate change? Does it explicitly address factors of equity, particularly racial equity? What racial demographics does the proposed action impact in particular? So for the transportation group, you might think about putting in new bus stops or any of the strategies that that we'll be developing. Each of you is coming from a different piece of that puzzle, and so I want you to put your decision-making process hats on and really think about, do those questions, are they useful? Would this be a practical tool that someone could use, whether they're creating new policies or putting in budget requests, writing a grant application? Are the right questions being asked? So I want to take a few minutes for you folks to think about that and start adding your feedback to that slide. And I am going to put Jeff on the spot if he's still here, because he attended the Buildings and Energy group yesterday. And so he already went through this activity, and maybe he could help give us some feedback.
Yeah, yesterday it went really, really well. We like the organization of it so far. Anything that you can say, if you have a red X, my group's going to address that first. We were lucky yesterday. There were no red X's, just a few question marks. So let us know if there's something that you can't live with, because we want to address that first for sure.
Okay, excellent. So I'm going to open up the document and share that on my screen. But I think I have to stop and start share again. So are you seeing the Google Doc? All right. So this first one, I see everyone's got their cursors in it. Go ahead and your stars and question marks. Someone already put a question mark next to the second one. Does the proposed action generate burdens, either directly or indirectly? I would love to hear why, what the question is, so we can kind of get used to this activity together.
Yeah, my only, I put that question mark there. My only question about that one is, does burden include time? Because with your tree example in particular, it takes time to train like tree stewards and have that kind of mindset within the community. So does this burden include time, is my question.
That's an excellent point. I love that. So for example, at the bottom, where it says, at the very bottom of the slide, if you scroll down, it says add feedback. If you want to add anything to any of these points or add a new question, please go ahead and put it there. There's something in general about it. I'm going to create a new slide at the very end called feedback. Let's see. So on this one, if you have anything kind of that might cover more than just the slide you're on, go ahead and add it to the end of this. Like I said, this is just a big living document for us all to share. So that's a great point. Any other feedback so far on this one?
So this is Julie. This is Julie. On the first one, I like what communities would benefit most from the proposed action. But I think in this particular category, maybe what we want to ask is what communities don't benefit from the proposed action.
It's a great point. That's a great point. Yeah, so if you want to add that under feedback or someone else could add that, that was really helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so this document is going to be open. We can all address all of the slides, but let's go ahead and jump together as a group to community wealth. That's slide number 8. So this one is, does the proposed action promote community wealth? Well, we might want to ask some questions of ourselves like, does it support historically disenfranchised communities through workforce development, contracting opportunities, or increased diversity of employees and staff across sectors? So with that, we'll want to consider, might there be, by asking ourselves that question, maybe there are some more targeted actions that we could take to lift those elements up. Are the benefits of the proposed action broadly accessible to households and businesses throughout the community, particularly communities of color, low-income populations, minorities, women, emerging small businesses? And I think this is a really good one to think of in terms of transportation strategies. So this is where I'd love to hear your thoughts on making sure we're asking the right questions. Take a few minutes to reflect on this one to yourself and drag the symbols around, provide feedback, speak up, but we're just going to take about 5 minutes here and work on this together in the larger group, and then we'll break up into smaller groups.
Don, I am just going to speak up with a comment on shared baseline. There may be a opportunity for each of these, which talk about, they ask these important questions. There may be an opportunity to engage disenfranchised populations with these same questions. Maybe just one previous question, which is, what are the challenges that our region has with blank? And so in this case, with community wealth, just so that the analysis can be based on some, doesn't have to be a fully shared understanding, but it could be input from communities that are historically disadvantaged, just to provide a little bit more of a background. And I say that because the review of these without a grounding in input from those disenfranchised might miss some of the, like the system itself a system of previous knowledge might not be able to properly answer the question. So understanding what the disparities are may be a critical step here with regards to, in this case, community wealth, government accountability, equity, engagement and communication, and racial equity and environmental justice. So it's like, what are the disparities present in? And so just being aware of those disparities as we plan to answer them.
It's a great point, Alan. I think that's a good one for that last slide, the blank feedback slide, if someone wants to make that point there. Yeah, I think that's the other piece of the conversation. I heard a really good point the other day in the environment working group. A person of color spoke up and said that what they really liked about this tool is that it takes the work off them as being the one representative of this voice, and gave him the space to talk about all the other contributions that he can make to the group, because now that responsibility is shared. Everyone then is asking these questions and thinking about it. But like Alan just said, you can ask the questions, but you also have to make sure that we understand what those challenges are. So great point.
I have another question, well, not a question, but rather a question that could possibly be added to the list, which is something to the tune of what can be done to motivate people in the community to jump on board with the ideas. because it seems like a lot of these ideas are things that we ask ourselves or what we would do to implement stuff. But then what about when something is taking form? You know, what would motivate people in the community to participate and take some ownership in the change too?
I'd like to add, in the roundtable group, we're kind of at that point right now with talking about engaging the community and what the incentive is for them and kind of how to word that, or even come up with ideas so we're kind of on the same track there. I think that was Stefan talking. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I would like to bounce off of that. They said it perfectly. It's just like, how are we gonna get this information properly to everyone, like equitably throughout the city, and how like this information can help promote like community wealth and other engagements that we're trying to propose in this action. So yeah.
Excellent feedback. Thanks, folks. So I see a question mark next to the third one. I see a bunch of stars and a question. Could this increase opportunities for living wage jobs in the same zip code as where people live? So what is the clarifying question and what might make that better? Any thoughts?
This is Dan again. I was just curious. I guess it's not really a question, but I was writing it in the bottom feedback. But just keeping in mind that getting from place to place in the same zip code can still sometimes be difficult and have accessibility issues. So not to like, you know, I think that's still a good point. I just wanted to bring that in.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. And I see another question mark. Does the proposed action promote employer responsibility to its employees? What could we add to that to make it more helpful of a question?
I guess I just wasn't really sure what this meant and how it relates to sustainability. I just need more information, I think.
Angela or Anthony, do you remember the context of that question?
What I was like trying to get through and think about it, it's like what like the employer, like I work at Starbucks, like the employer's responsibility is like to give us the information needed for the best opportunity when employed. So like these proposed actions of like small businesses or anything that's going to help promote community wealth, like get out there. Are we going to continue seeing these employers that gives these opportunities for like a better equitable stance in the city? Like, are they going to get those same like benefits, not just like the same, you know, small things that we don't know? It's just like responsibility. This is what I'm just thinking, like the responsibility employer needs to better everyone, you know, like equitably, like give them the same opportunity, like get 401k or like get like anything like health insurance with it, and like having them an opportunity to say, give them a choice to be like better equipped and better educated on their like placement of work, not just like an hourly paid job. If that's my understanding, anyone can correct me.
Thinking about like specific situations might be a little bit difficult. Just as a question, what comes up in my head, and I don't think that my group came up with this question, but from what I get from it is, you know, other examples of employers maybe or things happening in certain neighborhoods because it is a low income neighborhood, and are they recruiting, or they're going to set up shop here, do this production here because they know they can get low wage employees? Just asking that question to make sure that it's not based on the fact that they're exploiting people, essentially, in so many words. That's kind of what I get from it. Anthony, I don't know if that was what you meant to.
Yeah, pretty much. You know, English is hard.
Well, I think this kind of gets at the goal of these questions, just to get us thinking about things differently and asking the questions, just considering the measures that might not traditionally be within our scope.
Yeah,
So-
hopefully it will be, yes, of course, duh, you know, but we still ask the question to make sure that it was done, so.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you. Good example. Some of these questions are hard, and but I think that it's always helpful to ask the questions. Okay, so what we're going to do now is split up into breakout groups. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And let's see if I can kind of guide you on this next activity. So each of you is going to go into a breakout room with a facilitator, and your role will be to focus on those questions in that community priority. And you can do it silently, you can discuss it out loud, whatever's useful for you. If you are with David, you'll be jumping to the engagement and communication screen, a slide rather. If you are with Wendy, then you'll be jumping to the government accountability slide. If you're with Jeff, you'll jump to the housing and building slide. If you're with Max, you can jump to the neighborhood slide. And for those of you, Brianne, are you on this line? I can't see.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I have everybody already assigned to a specific room, if that's all right.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, so then health and well-being is with Brianne. So we're going to review that draft equity screening tool content through discussion. You're going to use the symbols and slide notes to provide your feedback. And so for you to consider, what questions can we ask to ensure that each strategy prioritizes equity as it relates to each community priority. So just like we've been doing in this larger group, you're going to do it in your smaller breakout sessions. So you have 20 minutes to do this, and then we'll come back to the larger group and we'll share our findings.
Right. And I need to add Brianne to room. Let's see, can you see her? Because she wasn't on when I did it all. So I need to add Brianne to room 5 and me to room 2.
Okay, I can. So it looks like everyone is back into the main room. You've been teleported back. I'd love to hear some reflections on what you've kind of processed since we were together before this little breakout.
Don, do you want to go in group order or just free for all?
I think free for all would be great.
All right.
Or maybe you need me to tell you order. How about who was in group 1? Breakout room 1.
I think that was our group. Diane,
David.
and John, and Julie. If anyone wants to share anything.
I think this is Diane. There were some of the comments that talked about or suggested that we already knew a lot about some of the disenfranchised communities, like their priorities and things that maybe suggest that we already know that, and maybe we don't. And so there needs to be a test of, I guess, for those areas that don't, how do you will the action increase that understanding of the neighborhood's priorities versus suggesting that we already know what they are.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, engagement and communication.
Oh, I
it's
should have
gonna
said
look-
that. I'm sorry.
It's going to look different. No, it's going to
Yeah.
look different for different communities. Absolutely.
And that there probably are different partners too
Mm-hmm.
that would be engaged based on the community and their trusts of different organizations and people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, how about Wendy's group with government accountability?
I'll invite my teammates. We had good conversations. So anybody,
Oh, I'd love to hear about it.
I don't know, Alan, Angela, Alex had the 3 A's, I guess. So anybody?
We had a lot of fun, and some of our just our considerations were that for the government accountability, there was a lot of difference between different departments or different programs. So we talked about multiple metrics, and I'll leave it to other members of the group to talk about some other things, but we ultimately were talking about all sorts of reporting structures and accountability being a two-way street for collaborators and communicators.
Yeah, I'll add, I can't even begin to wrap my head around how those metrics would look, but the questions are being asked. You know, how do we know that the government has been held accountable and this whole thing is successful? And it seems like there's, you know, being able to answer those questions, there's gonna be some things that are way above my head to be implemented, hopefully.
Great point. How about the housing and buildings group? Jeff was facilitating that one. Do we have a volunteer?
Sandra, would you mind? Otherwise, I can speak for us.
Jeff, you can, and I can chime in if you need me to, please.
Yeah, for sure. You got a lot of bullets, a lot of feedback from us. We liked a lot of things, and there's some small changes. For example, when we talk about metrics, we need to be very intentional. Like, could this reduce the number of families that are cost burdened by housing and transportation? The number is always going to be growing, unfortunately. The question is it the percentage? So when we write these, we want to make sure that we're asking the right data output question. That's something that we talked on. We generally would appreciate in recommendations or questions like, could this reduce barriers to home ownership? If just in parentheses, we put things like credit issues, the remaining history of redlining is very active, access to stable employment, just so that we don't have to explain these questions. But once you get a couple examples, all of a sudden your head starts going and you start making up your own things for that. And I'll just throw out one more. Whenever we use the word concentration, we want to be sure that concentration isn't a bad thing if it is occurring in disenfranchised communities. We spoke about, you know, wealthier school districts get funding because they can participate. And how do we ensure concentration where participation is really challenged? And I invite my group to chime in.
This is Sandra. So yeah, I'm Jeff. Yes, I think we did excellent conversation, and I was amazed how like-minded we were in making sure that we were inclusive in decisions, even as pertaining to schools, but transportation as well.
Excellent feedback. Thank you so much. How about the neighborhoods group that Max was helping to facilitate?
We put stars by all of them. We thought all of the bullets were good. We did think that there was just maybe one slight thing missing, which was expanding non-car access to essential destinations like services, grocery stores, healthcare, green space. A lot of that was sort of listed in various bullets above, but we just wanted to make sure that people without cars can equitably access those destinations, and that just wasn't quite nailed right on the head. And then in the third bullet, we want to make sure that the the green space parks and green space, they have safe access to quality spaces.
I love that.
I'll defer
Excellent.
to my group if they want to add anything else.
Anyone else have a comment on neighborhoods? Really good feedback. Thank you so much. And then the last one was Brianne's group with health and well-being. Do we have some feedback from that team? I know you had a big group, and Brianne does a lot of talking, so I'm sure she would love for someone else to speak up.
Yeah, Jason, Wyatt, Dan, anybody? Patricia? Well, I'll just.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
will add in. We had a pretty lengthy conversation about how we could even involve, which sounds kind of hokey, I think, but it is actually relevant. The metric of happiness, like how are we actually helping people to enjoy their lives? We often think about transportation in terms of efficiency. We were focusing a lot on health, but it really doesn't kind of add in the societal or health benefits of active transportation, transit, that element of seeing someone that you always know from your route and kind of saying hi. And so that was something that Dan brought up that I thought was a really good point of just how are we helping people to shift away from thinking about transportation as something that they have to do, and also making that a part of their day that they enjoy, whether that's walking or biking or taking transit.
Great. Anyone want to add anything else from that group?
Can I add something? I wasn't in that group, but something that occurred to me is that, in part of the motivation and getting this idea out to people is that that metric is the most easily measured. If it comes down to like heart rates and body weight and stuff like that, as opposed to employment opportunities or home ownership. Like after a few weeks of walking and committing to that and having a way to do that, you'll notice your changes in your physiology, your weight and so that's something, that kind of metric is probably the easiest to measure.
Yeah, excellent point. Great feedback, guys. Really appreciate it. Wendy is going to put you back into a breakout room. We're going to have another 5 minutes of a one-on-one just to kind of circle back. Hopefully you'll get someone new, or you can just share ideas about how you see this equity screening tool being used in your own work outside of this planning process. So she's going to divide you up into those groups of 2. Take the 5 minutes to just kind of process what we've talked about today. If you want to go back into the Google document and continue to make comments that maybe this larger conversation spurred ideas around, then feel free to do that. But when Wendy's ready,
Ready?
we'll go
Yep.
ahead.
Here we go.
Okay, there you go. Okay, welcome back, everybody. So hopefully you had some more good dialogue. I love all the contributions that this group has made today. Really got all of us thinking in some new directions. So thank you for that. Just kind of want to revisit the next steps and why we're doing all of these exercises. So our task is drafting these SMARTY strategies, and that's at the Equity, Climate, Action, Resilience nexus. So we'll be asking the question, does it address the community priorities? Does it reduce greenhouse gas emissions? Does the strategy increase resilience to climate impacts? And the way we're doing that is by using this SMARTY strategy. We have all heard of strategic, measurable, ambitious, realistic, and time-bound. Clear deadlines, and it's not so challenging, but it's ambitious, measurable. But then the equity tool is what's going to help us get to that IE, the inclusive and the equitable pieces. So, inclusive brings the traditionally excluded individuals and or groups into this process. I think you've all done a great job of thinking that through really well today. And then, of course, equitable, including that element of fairness or justice that seeks to address the systemic injustice, inequity, or oppression. So, with that, just want to give you an overview of what's to come. So this is the workflow for the remaining meetings. We will have one more in January, and then that's where we'll go through the climate vulnerability and risk assessment. So we're really going to appreciate your contributions to that one. A lot of really looking at Richmond's assets and thinking through how climate change is affecting or what the risks are, which vulnerable assets we have when it comes to climate change. And then in February, drafting the strategies, we'll be doing that as a group. And then once it goes back through the community working groups and the roundtable, we'll be revising the strategies, and then it gets put out into the community, and we move into community engagement phase 2. So that's what's to come. Lots of back and forth. And all of this great feedback is definitely being incorporated. So you have a little bit of homework by Monday. Please revisit that tool and add any other feedback that you'd like to submit. And then the video that I referenced earlier in the meeting and Wendy put in the chat, it's an Equity Foundation's video, and it's just excellent. I can't say that enough. It's 40 minutes. It'll get you thinking in ways that you haven't before. So take a look at that. And then, like I said, our next meeting is Thursday, January 21st at 1 p.m. And we'll start drafting our strategies as time allows at that meeting. So hopefully you'll all be able to join us for that important meeting. And for now, please see the survey link that's in the chat for any additional feedback that you want to give us so that we can incorporate your thoughts into our next meeting and make these meetings even more effective. So I just want to thank you all so much for these 2 hours. It's been really helpful to us, and I hope it was helpful to you. And with that, I'll say have a great day. I will stay on this line if you want to stick around and ask any questions.
Did you say that surveys in the chat?
Yeah. Did I get the right one? Let's see.
Oh, the Google Doc is in the chat.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Let me get it real quick. Sorry.
Thank you for pointing that out, Angela.
Sorry, I thought I copied the right.
Yeah, lots of links.
I know. Let me here it comes.
And I'll also include that link in the follow-up email. So on Friday, once all of the recordings are downloaded and I can assemble all the pieces, I'll send out the links again.
Did I get the right one, Angela?
Yep.
Okay.
I got it. It's open. No problem.
Thanks. Sorry. Okay. Thank you all.
I've got a question outside of the focus of the group, but I was curious as someone that's relatively new to what's going on. Is there a list of contacts or information where someone like me can get more involved in some of the other groups? Because I've heard of different transportation groups and things that are happening, and I've combed through media and I've found some like this one, but it seems there's some more. So there are more out there that I like to get involved with. Is there a list?
I'm going to let someone else answer that question.
Hey, Stefan, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on with a lot of us on this call. Is there any specific things that you want to get deep into?